And so we may have some interdisciplinary or personal things going on. So I'm able to sit with folks and help make perspective. And that's one thing that I would mention as a tool for leaders is to actually really work on well-being yourself so that you can help out your team members, especially when they have conflict. Because the more that we are grounded, the more perspective making we can do. And that's really important.
I just wrote down make perspective. Like I want to take that nugget.
Hey everyone, I'm your host, Courtney Post, and this is Let's Vet Together by Suvetto, a show where we'll be highlighting stories of growth, ownership, and well-being in the veterinary industry and having real conversations about how we can make veterinary medicine better for everyone. If this is your first time listening, welcome. We're glad you're here. If you've already been a part of our community, make sure to follow us on whatever platform you're listening from and give us a review to let us know how we're doing. We really appreciate you for coming back.
Welcome to another episode of Let's Vet Together. Today, I am so excited to sit down with my colleague and friend, Lis Conarton from the Veterinary Medical Center of Central New York, just down the street from me in Syracuse, New York. Lis, welcome to the podcast, finally.
Thank you for having me, Courtney.
Yes, this is exciting. So today we're going to really dive into your background, Lis. You have a really unique background in veterinary medicine, from starting as a technician and the work that you are now doing in social work and in kind of operational culture. And to start off, can you just give us a little introduction? Who you are, where you live, perhaps if you brought something fun to share to our Let's Vet Together listeners.
Sure. So I've lived in this area now in Syracuse, New York for about 23 years. So this is where I know my life, to be. I've also been at my clinic that long. So quite a long time. And through that time, there was many transitions. So coming out of undergrad in 2003 in Ithaca to wanting, to be a veterinarian and getting more small animal experience, and then realizing maybe that's not for me, but the path moves, and I know we'll talk about that, forward. And so what I want to bring is I actually have Syracuse Salt Company. So
Love
Syracuse
it.
is known as Salt City, right? And the salts that I have, I collect them all. I won't tell you how many I have, but it's a local company, and they use the salts from our salt brines, which are natural to Onondaga Lake, and then they kind of curate them with different, tastes and flavors. Like lavender flake salt is one of my favorites.
That's great.
And lemon rose salt. And then they have espresso salt, which goes really good on apple pie with vanilla ice cream.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah, I'm thinking baked goods. I'm thinking popcorn. I'm a popcornaholic. And for all of our listeners, fun fact that the salt potato originates from Syracuse, New York, which I did not realize that was not a universal. I grew up, not far from Syracuse, but salt potatoes are one of my favorite things. So if you don't know what those are, reach out to Lis or I, and we'll share with you the magic of salt potatoes. So, great, Lis. Well, can you share with us a little bit about your journey into veterinary medicine, from, it sounds like, undergrad and a desire to potentially be a veterinarian, and your time as a technician, just a little bit of that journey.
Sure. So when I realized that I needed more small animal experience, I had a professor who had colleagues at the Veterinary Medical Center, and they were setting up a shadow for me, which became employment. At that time, I worked for our owner and surgeon. And then it started to transition when I saw a physical therapist and technician there working with patients. So I saw her working with family members. She was moving the dog through, how to regain strength, pain management, she used specific tools that were really interesting because they integrated human medicine, physical therapy. And that since that was in 2003, that was really kind of the start of rehab medicine and vet med. They worked on it before from 1990 until then, but that was an interest to me. So I started to see things differently and realize that I wanted to be part of that human animal bond and part of the relationship that the pet family and caregivers have with their pet. And so I learned what I needed to do in order to move in that direction, and it was to become a licensed tech and certified in rehab.
Yeah. And what was that journey from being a licensed tech to being certified in rehabilitation? What have you seen in those years? That was early time to be in physical therapy and rehab in 2003. What was that journey like? How did you even begin to integrate that offering to your clients? What has that journey been like in the last 20 years?
Yeah. So first I had to say why this was extremely important for our facility. We were a 24-hour emergency and then became later a critical care and specialty clinic. And so working closely with a surgeon. I was a surgeon assistant, and then I was an emergency technician. I was, working with patients postoperatively just on my own and saying, let me prove to you that rehab could really work. And so from building that trust in that relationship, they decided we want to keep her around. We don't want her going anywhere. So we'll support her journey. And so I actually attended tech school and did my CCRP at the University of Tennessee at the same time.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I did not realize that.
Yeah. So I was going through tech school and since it was online at that time, which is one of the first programs through Cedar Valley, Texas, I had to have externships elsewhere. So Cornell University, Upstate University. So I was doing what I love, which is learning. I'm a student learner forever. And then at the same time, I went down to Tennessee because they used to have an in-person program, which was 2 weeks long. And then you move through that transition. And so once I took all my testing and got my licensing requirements and my certification, I was able to really move myself into full-time rehab, which happened in 2009.
That's great. So I'd love to talk about what you're doing today and just kind of bring our listeners up to speed, and then go back to kind of weaving, your like day to day of, kind of where rehabilitation, physical therapy lives in your day to day in your heart, and how that is part of your career. But you continue to learn, develop, and see an opportunity for yourself, and I'm sure for your community in the area of social work. So some of our listeners might not realize the presence of social work within veterinary medicine. So can you share with us when you realized what the world of, kind of the need, I should say, of social work within veterinary medicine, what your journey was like to your certification and your education there?
Yeah. So as I moved into the expert part of my field in rehab and really felt like that was under my belt, the challenges that came up oftentimes were clients' needs for emotional regulation in our sessions. And so they'd say to me things like, well, it feels like a therapy session for my pet and for myself. So that's the first realization. I knew I wasn't a therapist. And I was like, oh no, we're just bonded over your animal. And then in 2019 into 2020, when COVID hit, is really when I started to see the effects it had on my loved colleagues, my beloved colleagues, and in our community. It was very dire times, and we needed that strategic placement of our workers to be present for our community. So that is when I decided to go for my MSW program.
And what is, for those that don't know, what is that MSW program? What is social work, Lis?
Social work is basically, it's a discipline or profession, an academic recognition of people who want to work towards social justice for the people and the well-being of those affected. So it can be from individuals to families to communities. And really it's an advocacy work and being a change agent to get that person resources in order to have the best well-being they can possibly have.
Awesome. So in what way does social work show up in veterinary medicine? I know you mentioned your colleagues in 2020, all of us saw the effects that 2020 had on this profession and on our colleagues and on our peers and on ourselves, right? This was, essential workers, there's so much uncertainty in the world, let alone what happened within the walls of vet practices. So how does social work show up within the walls of a vet practice? Is it within a team and within your colleagues within VMC that you show up and provide that advocacy and social work? Or is it what you mentioned before and, from a client perspective?
So that's a great question. And Courtney, I think it's both. And so in our four walls, what we are seeing is a rupture oftentimes in the human to human bond. So we all come here for the human animal bond, but we don't realize how important the human to human bond is for even our patients and animals directly. And so it's working on building team trust and culture that's positive, the language around that's helpful for each other, well-being for ourselves and for our teams. And so that looks like running groups to help balance well-being and leadership. That looks like helping with concerns in our community like domestic violence and helping our patients have respite when people are undergoing fleeing and seeking safety. And then the client part, that's where it comes into play, is like helping the client with their pet because that is their bond. And also to help clients through the grieving process. Veterinarians wear many hats and they weren't trained to be counselors. And they often say, my gosh, like I'm a financial, guru and now I have to be a therapist. And all joking aside, you're really not trained in that as a veterinarian. So I can step in and help provide those resources and also debrief on what they might be experiencing.
So what does your day-to-day look like, Lis? Are you still providing rehab and where you started and with your passion to, impacting that human animal bond as well as social work with your colleagues and your clients? What is the day in the life of Lis look like at VMC?
Sure. So yeah, I would say 30% of the time I'm actually interacting with clients and doing what I love, which is education, myofascial work, seeing that human animal bond, and practicing my skills, talking with clients. So I'm still in it there. And so that's at Care Pet Therapy, which I manage and help support. And we have an amazing team. And then the 70% of the time is working through things like our veterinary immersion program with new vets. So teaching them the well-being components of all of the other part of that model that really works to educate them and support them. That looks like developing critical incident stress management teams so that when we have a critical incident, something that causes psychological distress within our employees or clients, that I could be there and institute protocols that really work for them to mitigate any type of stress disorder that they might have, either acute or post-traumatic. And so and it varies. Like I do community efforts, building best DB&B into our region to give respite care to our patients so that we can help those clients get to shelter and then reunite with their animals, which is super important.
Tell me more about that, Lis. Tell me more about this. Yeah, best DB&B.
Has my heart too, right? So they are just like an Airbnb, but Best DB&B helps to bring the community members to watch people's pets while they're in and seeking safety and in shelter and transitioning. And so what it looks like is it's very, really like HIPAA compliant. There's confidentiality. They set up systems within our shelters to allow for the transfer to be very confidential. And it gives us the ability to help both the patient and the client, because when they come into our workplace and they're seeking safety overnight, we can help the patient if something's going on, but we're not really sure how to help the client. So there are shortages in shelters, just like any other support. And so many shelters, or I should say most in the area, don't accept animals. And people aren't going to leave their pets when they're having violence perpetrate on them. So,
it's just not something that I think everyone thinks about, especially at a 24/7 hospital, that it's not just animals that walk in your door that are seeking help and are in a dire situation and maybe in a life or death situation. It's the humans too that come in with themselves and their pets that, when your light is on 24 hours a day, it just, you almost can't anticipate what is going to walk through the door, but there's going to be a human element to it, as much as there's going to be an animal element to it.
Absolutely. And that can cause, some moral distress within our veterinary teams if they don't have resources. And so that's where social work really comes into play. When people say, well, we don't need social workers, we can do this, we've been doing this for years. It's that extra layer, it's that extra piece, it's that extra resource that perhaps can help mitigate burnout because people don't know what to do.
Sure. You mentioned burnout. You mentioned well-being with your immersion doctors. And for those that don't know, that's the new graduate or more recent graduate program that the Veterinary Medical Center has that, develops future emergency physicians. So from your time in the role that you have been at VMC, what are the more common challenges that you see just directly our veterinary profession facing in the spirit of well-being? Like, what is challenging our well-being the most, and what are some simple tools that our listeners can use either for themselves or for their teams?
Sure. So we have, of course, staffing shortages. And so we're overcased and we don't have enough team members to take care of patients. So turning them away, diverting them, or not being able to do the treatments like you want to on time could be morally distressing to our team. Interpersonal conflict, we are, very heightened team members in the face of challenges, and our emotions come forward. And so we may have some interdisciplinary or personal things going on. So I'm able to sit with folks and help make perspective. And that's one thing that I would mention as a tool for leaders is to actually really work on well-being yourself so that you can help out your team members, especially when they have conflict. Because the more that we are grounded, the more perspective making we can do. And that's really important.
I just wrote down make perspective. Like I want to take that nugget of make perspective. How would you phrase that to hospital leaders, to humans as we help other humans? Like, how can we help make perspective for ourselves and for others? Because I think there's some gold in that list, like to reframe what current situation or feelings or emotions we may be in.
Yeah, so I think it first comes from the well-being aspect, which means to really do some self-reflection. And we all have a self-critic, right? So all of us have that critic come up, especially when we're feeling burned out, because it's trying to protect us. Something in our past helped to protect that part of us. And now we, as adults and lived experience, can take that self-critic and say, I know what you're saying, and I'm going to be kind to myself. So it's giving that self-compassion, because the more that we expand compassion for ourselves, the more that we can have compassion for others. And that's where perspective making comes into play. So when that critic's talking, we're going to have more judgment, and it's going to be very hard for us to make perspective when we're judging both ourselves and others.
Yeah, that's phenomenal advice is to be kind to yourself before you can be kind to others, and accepting that response is coming from someplace, and that acknowledgement. So
absolutely. Yeah. Befriend your critic. Don't kind of push them down and say, befriend your critic. That's what I tell people. And they look at me like I'm crazy until they really try and they put tools into place to understand there's a message coming up and they need to pay attention to that message.
I feel like I'm going to have a lot of sticky notes around my desk list of these amazing phrases from Lis herself of befriend your critic. So as a leader in a hospital, what is like just a small tool, whether it's directing people to resources or creating space within the team? Like, how can our listeners that are leading, hospitals that it seems like it's, a big mountain to climb. They don't have a resource, maybe, like you within their hospital. They can hear that, yes, I want to create space that we can befriend our clinic, that we our critic, that we can make perspective. But like, what are tangible things that someone can do today to help create a space of emotional well-being, or at least provide resources to their team to start to address some of this?
Sure. I think it first comes from the leadership team within themselves having a common language. So that common language, it could be, we'll take a step back. We can use DBT skills like the STOP acronym, STOP, take a step back, observe your surroundings and proceed with caution. So it's just that pause that we need to do. And then think about, using the common language of what might be this person feeling, or what this person might be feeling in this instance. And the more that we can pause and then use common language, that starts to trickle down and get passed to the people that we are, supervising, or the people that we're colleagues with. And so I would say that having meetings as team leaders is extremely important, and learning perspective from one another, and whatever that common phrase you might use. We use bumped out from CRIM. It's a community resilience model, and anyone can learn the community resilience model. It's easily accessible online. And so we use the common term bumped out instead of reacting. So we feel a certain way, we use that word, we know where we're at, and we're able to help regulate each other. And so, just really it comes around the language that we use.
Yeah, and we will, all of the resources that you mentioned and that model, we will make sure that we tag in this podcast for anyone that wants to check those out. And we will certainly also ask you, when we wrap up, any other resources that you want to include, Lis. But I do want to ask you that, so you set off in 2019 to get this master's in social work. You are now, in addition to the work and the management that you do of the rehab and physical therapy center within VMC, you are the director of organizational culture and engagement at the hospital. Yes. What transformation have you seen? And if you can give me, your most impactful story, like what have you seen this very large hospital, who, again, 24/7 critical care, the impact of social work directly, tangibly on the team?
Sure. So it is through empowering others, especially those who, are leaders and they don't know their leadership abilities. So there's a group, we called it focus group because they were my first folks to work with. They were technician leaders that have been there for a while, and other ones that really integrated well. And we started off sessions and we talked about communication, culture, well-being, the use of self, and recognizing the skills they can develop. And from that, I have seen this group do amazing things. And because it's spread wide through our hospital, they were from all different shifts, from our day and night and evening shift. What I have seen is that they are teaching others how to make perspective. The skills they're using to ground themselves, the skills they're using to communicate extremely well with clients, de-escalate specific, situations that are happening. So really it's using my social work skills and identity and empowerment. And all I did was I sat with them and I empowered them to use the skills they already had and maybe weren't, they didn't know about, and we can cultivate.
Yeah, that's incredible. So if someone doesn't have the incredible human and resource that you are within their hospital, because you're both. It's not just about your education. You're also an incredible human being. But how can they tap into some of the knowledge that you have? Like, what resources would you direct our hospital leaders to have within our Suvado network? I'm sure they can reach out to you directly. But if they want to, kind of take on some education of themselves, want to use some resources, maybe address this within their leadership team, where would you direct folks?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, Courtney, for the kind words you said. So it would be, first learning about what social work could be. So there's a human certificate program that's very helpful in this work through University of Tennessee's veterinary social work, and that's was run by Dr. Elizabeth Strand. And that network is fabulous because they are helpful with Mentor Vet, and they have many other things under their belt that can help each individuals. They also have group sessions, so they can be extremely helpful. The International Association of Veterinary Social Work, they are also wonderful educators and teachers. It brings and encompasses many social workers, and now they're looking at other clinicians in the mental health community. Yeah, to be a part of it. So the IEVSW is extremely helpful as well. And then lastly, the people that are in the Sovetto network, absolutely. Some have reached out to me. I am here for you. So, go ahead and we'll have my email available. And then to those who might be listening outside of the network, I also have an LLC. It's Compassionate Connections and Solutions Consulting. And I do help with consulting our, veterinary teams. And so I can develop a plan for them.
Oh, that's fantastic. Awesome. Well, before we part today, what can we do individually for ourselves, Lis? This is our, what's your one piece of advice if to recenter ourselves outside of work in our home lives? What do you do to make sure that you are kind of staying dialed into your own self, your own emotions, that you can show up well for others? Is there just one little piece of advice that you can give everyone?
Sure. I'll use my favorite one, and it's called resourcing. So resourcing is finding something in your environment that helps ground you. It could be a memory about a special person. It could be a place that you visited. It could be your favorite place. It could be an animal. And when we ground and we find this resource, we sit with it. So we might sit in the space, we might hold our pet, and then we start to develop this kind of mind-body technique. And I talk about our nervous system a lot. So we regulate our nervous system. We might feel our animal's fur. So their soft fur. We might look at color. We might look at how they're purring in our lap, or how they're happily panting with their ball in their mouth. And so when we do these things, it helps to regulate our nervous system so that we can take that resource and we can close our eyes and pause for 5 minutes in a hectic day and go back to that resource. And it will help our nervous system do the same thing as when we're present with them. So it's just a wonderful resource, and it's part of the CRIM model. And that's one of my favorites.
Oh, I love that. I'm definitely going to take that. I feel like if I was a betting woman, I would say that, 90% of our listeners will all probably equate that to maybe sitting with our cat or our dog or our bird or our rabbit. Yes. My favorite child, my poodle in my lap, not my real children. My girls know that. There's no judgment. Yeah, no judgment zone. My children are well aware. Yes. But yeah, bringing ourselves back to that, even when we're not, with that pet and in a hectic moment, and that resourcing. So that's an incredible piece of advice. Thank you. I hope we're able to do this again. I encourage everyone to reach out to Lis. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. But, we're in a great place in veterinary medicine that we can talk about mental health and well-being, as well as the impact of social work, even if we don't realize that the social work is happening within the hospital, and we're using the common language and the awareness of the education that you've had. It's time to lean into that, because we're doing real work with dynamic teams that have big feelings, that there's just a reality to this business that we need to take care of ourselves and each other, as well as our clients. So again, this is a long overdue conversation, Lis, and I hope we're able to have another one again soon.
Me too. And I just want us to all remember how resilient we are. We are such resilient beings, and I think that is really important. So we can do it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today and for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thanks, Lis.